David had spent decades working hard, always assuming that retirement would be his golden years, a time of relaxation, travel, and financial freedom. He had done what he thought was right, following the traditional advice: work a stable job, contribute to a retirement fund, and eventually settle into a peaceful life. But now, sitting on his porch at 68, watching the world go by, he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of regret. The reality of retirement wasn't what he had imagined. He wasn't struggling to survive, but he also wasn't thriving. The financial cushion he had built didn't feel as secure as he had hoped, and every unexpected expense sent a wave of stress through him. He had spent years assuming everything would work out, but now he realized there were so many things he wished he had done differently. One of his biggest regrets was not starting to invest earlier. In his 20s and 30s, he had convinced himself that he'd start saving for retirement once he earned more money. But life had a way of always presenting new expenses: rent, car payments, vacations, and social outings. He had put off investing for years, assuming he had plenty of time. When he finally started putting money into investments in his 40s, he realized he had lost decades of potential growth. Even small investments in his younger years would have compounded into something significant. If he could go back, he would tell his younger self to invest early, no matter how small the amount. Another mistake he regretted was relying solely on one income source. He had dedicated over 30 years to a single company, trusting that his salary, pension, and Social Security would be enough to sustain him in retirement. But pensions weren't as reliable as they once were. Social Security barely covered his essentials, and the rising cost of living kept chipping away at his savings. If he had created multiple streams of income, like investing in rental properties, starting a side business, or building a dividend portfolio, he wouldn't feel so financially limited now. He had always believed that hard work alone was the key to financial security, but now he saw that smart financial planning was just as crucial. Health was another area where David had underestimated the impact of his choices. When he was younger, he had been too busy to focus on fitness, often eating fast food and skipping workouts because he told himself he'd get in shape later. But later never came, and now he was paying the price. His medical expenses had become a significant part of his budget, and his mobility was more limited than he had ever expected. If he could do it over, he would have prioritized his health just as much as his finances, because without good health, even a well-funded retirement isn't enjoyable. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Finance Family so you can avoid these common mistakes and set yourself up for a secure, stress-free retirement. Another regret that weighed on him was how little financial education he had received growing up. He had spent years working hard to earn money, but he had never really learned how to manage it effectively. He had taken on unnecessary debt, used credit cards carelessly, and assumed that simply saving was enough. But saving alone wasn't the key to wealth. Investing and financial literacy were. If he had dedicated time to understanding taxes, investments, and wealth-building strategies, he would have been in a much stronger position now. David also wished he had allowed himself to enjoy life more while he was younger. He had always planned to travel extensively in retirement, imagining himself exploring different countries and experiencing new cultures. But now, with health concerns and financial limitations, many of those dreams fell out of reach. He regretted postponing experiences, assuming that retirement would be the perfect time for everything. If he had balanced saving with enjoying life, he wouldn't feel like he had missed out on so much. And then there was the issue of helping others at his own expense. Over the years, he had lent money to friends and family, always assuming he'd have time to rebuild his savings. Whether it was co-signing loans, covering emergencies, or giving generous gifts, the money had added up. Now, in retirement, when he needed financial stability the most, he found himself wishing he had been more cautious. If he could do it again, he would set clear financial boundaries and ensure his own security before helping others. These were just a few of the lessons that David had learned the hard way. Retirement wasn't just about reaching a certain age. It was about making smart financial decisions early enough to create a future that allowed for true freedom and peace of mind. David had always assumed that retirement would mean the end of financial worries. He had worked hard, saved diligently, and done what he thought was right. But as the years passed, he realized that retirement wasn't just about having enough money. It was about having the right mindset and strategies to make it last. One thing he wished he had done differently was preparing for inflation. When he first started saving, a comfortable retirement seemed within reach. But over time, he watched as prices slowly crept up. Groceries, medical expenses, travel, everything cost more than he had expected. His retirement savings didn't stretch as far as he had planned, and he wished he had factored in how inflation would erode his purchasing power. If he could go back, he would have invested more in assets that kept up with inflation, like stocks and real estate, rather than leaving too much in low-interest savings accounts. Another mistake that became clear was underestimating the cost of long-term care. He had assumed Medicare would cover most of his medical expenses, but it didn't provide nearly as much coverage as he had hoped. Unexpected medical bills started adding up, and the thought of needing long-term care, whether in-home assistance or a nursing facility, became a serious concern. If he had planned ahead and looked into long-term care insurance, he could have saved himself from the stress of figuring it all out when he needed it most. One of his biggest regrets, however, wasn't just financial. It was not spending enough time with loved ones. Throughout his working years, he had been so focused on career success and financial stability that he often put off family gatherings, vacations, and quality time with friends. Now, in retirement, he found himself longing for those moments he had missed. The money he had saved was helpful, but it couldn't bring back lost time. If he could do it again, he would have prioritized relationships just as much as his financial goals. At the same time, he also regretted not planning for how he would spend his days in retirement. He had spent decades working long hours, and when retirement finally came, he felt lost. He hadn't thought about what would bring him fulfillment beyond financial security. Many retirees like him struggled with boredom and a lack of purpose, realizing too late that financial preparation was only part of the equation. If he had taken time to explore hobbies, social activities, or even part-time work before retiring, the transition would have been much smoother. He also wished he had diversified his investments more. While he had saved for retirement, he had been too conservative with his investments as he got older. He had pulled money out of the stock market too soon, fearing losses, and had missed out on years of growth. Looking back, he realized that keeping some exposure to higher return investments, even in retirement, would have helped his money last longer. He had been so focused on avoiding risk that he had actually increased his financial struggles in the long run. Another crucial lesson he learned was about estate planning. For years, he had put off making a will and setting up a trust, assuming there was plenty of time. But after seeing friends struggle with complicated legal battles and unexpected losses, he realized how important it was to have everything in order. Without proper estate planning, families often faced unnecessary taxes, legal fees, and disputes. If he could do it over, he would have met with an estate planner much earlier to ensure his wealth was passed down efficiently. As David reflected on his journey, he also realized how important it was to continue learning about finances even in retirement. The world was constantly changing. Tax laws, investment opportunities, and economic trends all evolved over time. If he had stayed more informed, he could have made better financial decisions and adapted to new opportunities. Retirement wasn't the time to stop learning. It was the time to be even more strategic. Despite his regrets, David knew that it was never too late to make adjustments. He began looking into new ways to generate income, downsized to reduce expenses, and restructured his investments to better suit his long-term needs. He started focusing on his health, making an effort to stay active and eat better, knowing that a longer, healthier life would ultimately save him money. And most importantly, he made a conscious effort to spend more time with the people who mattered most. As he sat on his porch, thinking about the lessons he had learned, he wished he could share them with younger generations to help them avoid the same mistakes and build a retirement they truly enjoyed. That's why it's important to plan now. Take control of your financial future and make smart choices while you still have time. If you found this story helpful, don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Finance Family for more insights on securing your financial future.